Hello, 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 fellow humans and eavesdropping bots. I'm Chris Nolan.
Hey guys, I'm Mike Schindler. I am one of the instructors at Captain Kirk University. I love this, Chris. Captain Kirk University. This is where we teach advanced courses in boldly going into the future.
We got to open that pretty soon here. So everybody, welcome back to the Rise of Humanness show, where we explore what it means to stay human in an increasingly automated, uncertain world.
And guys, be sure that you hit that subscribe button, share with your friends. We're not very picky about who you share
Strangers, people you don't know, we're not picky. Right.
And together we're going to show you how to stay absolutely powerful.
Stay human.
And rise and thrive in the age of AI.
Yes, and even show you how to beat the bots. Well, let's rise.
The rise of humanness in the age of AI. It's a podcast with Chris and Mike. The rise of humanness in the age of AI. Stay curious, stay human, let's rise.
Today, we are thrilled to have a true legend of human foresight, a man who basically is a walking spoiler alert for the future, John Sanei.
Well, John is the number five top futurist in the world. Yeah. He is he's a 5-time best-selling author. He's a master at helping humans. He is a master at helping humans really prepare for this uncertain world that is changing so rapidly. He's brilliant.
So buckle up, because John's here to guide us through this wild ride and help us focus on what can actually control our behavior, our awareness, and our hope for tomorrow. And we'll chew on that a little bit today, just a tick, because it's basically about changing who you are, right? Changing.
Well, a lot of futurists talk about the future in as technology and strategy. What I like to do is I like to take the first player approach. It's the person playing the game that determines how you develop the future, not the game itself. And I find it sometimes strange, because when you're telling me about the strategies and you're telling me about the technology, you're not taking into account if the player is ready to engage with it or not. And in fact, I think a lot of futurists scare their audiences more so than inspire to prepare them. So I think there's a lot to be said to take the Joe Dispenza perspective and to combine it with the simplification of artificial intelligence and technology to give people the best opportunity to prepare.
Absolutely. Like Mike, the reason I love John so much is that Dispenza is really about healing yourself first.
Yeah.
It's about the traumas, the past lives you have.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then without doing that, you cannot have a vision for the future.
And if you're going to go a little bit further before Dispenza, you had Einstein, who 120 years ago said the medicine of the future is the medicine of frequency.
Right.
Yeah, that's
right. And so if you understand that concept, you realize that the future is really there for us to experience based on the frequency that we have cultivated within ourselves. It almost makes it irrelevant what the technology may be, because when you have the right frequency, the right technology will find you, and you will find the right people. Those things will arrive as a natural repercussion of the work that you've done.
Yeah. Well, our program we see is kind of a life change. We built it to be for the 21st century and to be a life transforming, life changing type of program. We have a thing called the VUCA Max line, which is exactly what you're talking about, which everything below the line is victim, negativity. Yes. Everything above the line is creator, higher forces, which is exactly where Dispenza is at. And, it's where I love about you. You are justifiably number 5, and maybe with a bullet, the number 1.
Thank you.
Well, no, you know what I totally love about John? John, I love the idea that, remember, he talked about the game, like the player in the game. And Chris, you and I talked about that.
Yeah.
You and I talked about the game where I said, listen, it's kind of like a game. Like you've got to expand your vessel to the point where you go to the next level, right? Yeah. And if you never achieve, if you don't, it's like a video game, to be honest with you. You can be
a video
on the
game.
Same track. And if you don't know
exactly.
Yeah. So it's
exactly. And so I think that futurism used to be a topic of dissecting and curating the future. I think what it's evolving to now is elevating your awareness to see those opportunities ahead of you that you otherwise would literally not see. And the example I've been using in my latest book and my talks is, have you seen the share price for VW over the last year?
No.
It is right down the toilet. In fact, quite drastically, German car manufacturers are closing factories around the world. And the reason is that what used to determine the success of a car was the precision of the engine and how well you could sweat the engine to get as much power out of it. But today's cars will start to become much more focused on the battery production and how you can stretch what you can get out of the battery. The engine itself is almost it's a non-point. It's just, you'll have a natural engine. And so who owns the supply chains for all the battery production around the world? China. Who owns all the factories for all the battery production in the world? China. And so who's making VW's batteries? China. Which means that the whole German market didn't have the awareness to see the possible solutions ahead of them because of that repetition of the brain and the familiarity that it has.
You know, what a great metaphor for human beings.
Oh, totally.
Time it was physical. How much physicalness we could put into something.
Yes.
And intellectual too. But then as now it's switching to our energy, almost our consciousness.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where does that consciousness come from?
Yes.
As Joe Dispenza says, it doesn't necessarily always come from us.
Yes, absolutely. Well, look, I always find it weird that people that think that energy and the discussion of energy is woo-woo, but they still use Wi-Fi. And is Wi-Fi not woo-woo? I mean, you can't see Wi-Fi, and it's determining so many things around us. Radio, like, name it, your TV control.
Yeah.
So what we also have to realize is that we have such a thin slither of experience of reality based on our five senses. We kind of are in this idea that anything that doesn't fit into our five senses is rubbish. You must be smoking your socks. But the truth is, it's the most arrogant way to think about reality around us. And I mean, science has now proven to us our eyes see 0.004% of the potential light in the world. I mean, think about that. That is a ridiculously low number for us to be experiencing. And then think about hearing. Think about how animals and dogs can hear so much more. And our hearing is quite limited. And then go to the nose of the dog. How much can it smell and how much can we smell? 1,000 times more that it can smell than us. Which means that our level of experience of reality is so thin. And then we are arrogant in our way to defend that thinness of our reality. And that, I think, needs to change.
No, absolutely. I think also there's
Chris, we got to get the show started. Well,
can't we do that? Can't we do the bumper on the end? So down the rabbit hole.
I think we should do the bumping on the end. I think that's fine. I think we should kick it off later.
Well, because the thing that's really cool about what you're into, and what Mike, our whole thing with the Rise of Humanists, the podcast, we did a book on this, is that we're looking at things very much like you, almost in a human 2.0 way.
Yeah.
In other words, when you're talking about our senses and our consciousness, we did have kind of a 1.0 when we went from Cro-Magnon to Homo sapien. We got the prefrontal cortex during the Ice Age, they say. And now we're being forced to go to 2.5 maybe, or something like that, where Mike and I talk about this. He used the word vessel, which is a kind of a good, to expand who we are, to incorporate this AI world, or this technical world, or this augmented or ascendant world. And I think you're on the same page there.
Yeah, absolutely. Michael, do you want to say anything before I jump in there?
Yeah. I'm so mad. Chris knows this. John, the thing, I mean, when I get to talk to, we talk to some amazing people, and obviously, my experience being with generals and admirals and things along that line. And then I talk to people like you, John. The thing that I think is so amazing about what you're doing is that you understand the human potential. You understand that we've probably got everything inside of us. It's just a matter of discovering what we have inside of us and bringing that to the forefront. And I think that's really what I want you to talk about, because that's the piece that people need to understand is, they're in this self, how do I continue to improve myself, which is great. But I think you come from a perspective of like, listen, you've got it. You've got it. You just have to elevate. Is that right?
Yeah, you spot on. I think there's a few ways to want to skin this cat. And I think what I've always found best is to contextualize the solution. Without the context, it's very difficult to really land the solution. And there's two ways for us to skin this. The first one is that what we've done over the last sort of 100 years or so is we've relied on psychology to bring us some level of mental wellness and give us this level of evolution to a certain extent. But today, what has happened is that most of us, hopefully, have been to therapy, have read the psychological books, have watched the psychological TED Talks. We've engaged with those things. But the world is more lonely and more anxious and on more Prozac than ever before, which means that psychology as a practice might not be what it needs and what is required of us to move into this next phase. And what I think the next phase is neuroscience. And the difference is quite clear for me. Neuroscience is hardware, software is psychology. And so what we've been doing is updating our software on dated hardware. And it's like taking an iPhone 1 and trying to put iOS 16 into it. It's just not going to work. It just doesn't have the capacity to hold it. And so what we have to literally do is change how our brains operate. And that really does come from a practice of neuroscience, not a study of it, but a practice of it. Now, let's just put that to a side, and we'll come back to that now. But I also want to explain that for 10,000 years in the agricultural era, physicality was by far the most important thing we could bring to the table. And over the last 200 years, we've gone from adding horsepower to the world as humans, a third of horsepower, to today having rockets going into space at 70 million horsepower. We can't even compare ourselves to this level of power, let alone a car or a truck or just a tractor, anything. So we don't see ourselves as these physical beings. And over the last 200 years, we've developed IQ, logical thinking, analytical outcome-based thinking. And we think that this is the peak of humankind. And we think that in the level of arrogance that we have about our understanding of what's happening around us, what we do is we defend this algorithmic thinking and this IQ-based approach. And we realize that as AI starts to arrive, our IQ is being replaced just like our PQ got replaced by the Industrial Revolution, which allows us to start to ask a question: if the Industrial Revolution required muscles to make it happen. I mean, the agricultural needed muscles. The Industrial Revolution needed intelligence. The new AI era is going to need heart. It's a new system that needs to be engaged to bring about the emotional currency that is going to be required as we move into the future. Because IQ and PQ will be irrelevant. There's not our things to think about anymore. And so what we have to realize is that where we've come from has been the world of economies of seasons. So whatever the season was, it would determine the economic situation of where we were. In winter, you had a different financial outcome. In summer, you had a different one. And so we had this economy of seasons. When the Industrial Revolution arrived, we had the economies of scale, because it was all about efficiencies and outcomes and profitabilities. We are now currently in the economies of learning. In other words, how quickly can you unlearn to relearn and apply the learnings to get quick traction? This is kind of the startup mindset, the entrepreneurship mindset, really about the ability to learn and unlearn. A great example of this is Shein. Have you seen what Shein does? The Chinese clothing brand. They practice a business model called economies of learning. They are able to scrape the internet 24 hours a day and learn what you and I like, because of the clothes that we've shared online, on social media. They take those clothing that we've shared and liked the most, and they create 10 different variations in 20 different color ranges and put them onto their website. And whatever we start taking an interest in, they start to make and then let go of the things that we're not buying. That's called economies of learning, not economies of scale. It's a very different system that they've applied. It's how quickly can you learn to unlearn. And the next phase is going to be, and Chris, I said this to you on LinkedIn, will be the economy of consciousness. Yeah. Because we won't need money. We won't need the rudimentary way of adding value in the ways that we're adding value now. We will be sitting in a different consciousness and a different paradigm where our energy, our emotional currency will start to determine how we actually show up and what value we add. So we have to have the context of hardware and software and understand the play that we've been taking and realize that meditators, advanced meditators, are literally growing their brains more. They're growing the surface area of their brains to be able to hold more information and more software. So
I want to go back to something you said, John. You said it's kind of the art of neuroscience, right? It's not the study of, but it's the practice of. So what are some practical things that people can do? Because when you say the practice of neuroscience, what does that mean to you?
Yes. Very good. Thank you. I was going to unpack that, but thank you for asking.
Yeah.
I find that what we have to do is 3 or 4 things that are really, for me, maybe the most important when it comes to creating more adaptability in your brain. And when I say that practice is that you can read about neuroscience, but if you're not practicing the way to develop adaptability in your brain, it's just theoretical. So the first thing that I always remind people is that your personality is based on your memories. And your memories are really being sort of dramatized and are subjective depending on what mood you're in and how much you need to dramatize a memory from your past to confirm your irritation or anger that you have in today's world. And so what they're proving to us that most of our memories are false. They're not actually true. They're subjective stories that we decided to hold on to. Yeah. Now, the more traumatic your memory is, the more you've solidified that thought into your head. And now that becomes very determinant of what your personality is about. And so what you do is you create a full armament around you because of your expectation of what the world is ahead of you based on your memories. So step 1, practicing neuroscience, is healing your past. If you're not healing your past, your brain can't unwire from that trauma to rewire into a new way. And so what are the ways?
Talking about the unlearning piece, correct? You have to unlearn that, right?
No. We'll get to unlearn. No? We'll get to unlearn. Yeah, we'll get to unlearn.
Okay.
And the ways that I've seen that people are able to heal their past pretty quickly is through ayahuasca, psychedelics, and family constellations. These 3 practices go into your subconscious and are able to rewire and restructure a lot of your memories. I don't know if you've ever done any ayahuasca ceremonies. I've done many. And what Mother Ayahuasca does to you in the ceremonies is reminds you that many of your memories are just stories that are really not true. And the minute you realize that many of the stories are not true, you purge. And when you purge, what you're actually purging are the emotional characteristics that you've stored in your body to determine how you show up with your personality.
Why do you think that, John? Do you think does you think that separates you from your limbic area or somewhere? What does ayahuasca do?
So ayahuasca does a few things. It secretes DMT into your brain. Now, DMT is created twice in your life, when you're born and when you die. A baby's brain is full of DMT, and a person who's just passed, his brain is full of DMT. And so they've actually called it the soul molecule or the God molecule. In other words, when your soul comes in and when your soul leaves, your brain floods with this DMT. Now, what we realize is that if you ingest DMT, your stomach acids burn it away. So you can't actually engage with it. But thousands of years ago, some shamans in South America and the Amazon discovered that if they cook 2 plants together, a vine and a leaf, what happens is the vine blocks the stomach acids and the leaf secretes DMT. And so in this process, what starts to happen is you almost have a psychedelic altered state journey back to where you come from. And your guide is Mother Ayahuasca. And she's reminding you.
How long has this been around? How long has ayahuasca been around?
Like thousands of years. It was opened up to the Western world maybe 30 years ago. Do you remember I remember Sting talking about it when I was very young. I remember Sting talking about this brew that he had inside the Amazon. But what I'm trying to determine is that your memories are so entrenched in your subconscious that if you're not doing something that accesses your subconscious through an altered state, it's very difficult to access them. You can sit in therapy for decades and not access them really. So step one is memory recalibration. Because the minute you do that, your brain switches. You go from defense to exploration. Okay?
Yeah.
So that's step one.
We talk about that 95% of your who you are is subconscious or unconscious.
Yeah, you're
that's
unconscious.
right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So the second thing that we
You guys get a couple more. Let's hang in there.
I'll give you a couple more. Yeah. The second step is playfulness. What they've determined is that when you're in a play mode, your brain is more relaxed and more susceptible to learning and unlearning. So that's why when comedians, when they put you in a state of ease and laugh and then add some wisdom into that, you're doing an incredible amount of rewiring. And there's a great talk by Cleese. What's his name? That British comedian.
Oh, John Cleese?
Yeah, John Cleese.
Yeah.
No, not John Cleese.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. I can't think
You know what I'm talking about. He's brilliant. And he was talking about the fact that he became the most prolific writer amongst all of his friends because he kept playfulness alive in his life. And now the brain and how it patterns is playfulness. And in that space, you have a much more relaxed brain.
Fabulous, yeah. And it's also better for manifestation, too. When you're in open, receptive mode.
Of course.
Oh, yeah.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, let's think about what manifestation is. Manifestation is releasing who you used to be to determine or project who you want to be in the world that you want to be at. If your brain is constructed, you can't do that because it's so stuck and addicted to familiarity, it doesn't want to do that. The minute you relax it, you relax it. Like that's what happens. Like think about your body when it's relaxed.
Versus growth mindset. You know?
That's right, exactly. But again, growth mindset is really about understanding dopamine, which is a different subject, and we can get into that now.
Yeah,
we'll get into that. But
which is good and bad.
Yes. I mean, okay. Well, let me finish this, and we can get into that.
Yeah, go.
So the third thing is reverse mentorship. And reverse mentorship is getting younger people around you and you asking them questions. And the reason this is so important is that younger people are native to this world that we're moving into. We are not. We are trying to be native, but we're really not because we don't quite understand it. Do you remember us fixing our grandparents' VHS machine?
Yeah.
Right? Because they couldn't figure it out, right? Or when the first microwave arrived, nobody could figure it out until the kid came along and figured it out. Today, the VHS is replaced by AI. The VHS is replaced by media. The VHS is replaced by data. Who understands this world? Young people. And so whenever I see a 16 to 24-year-old kid, I am interrogating them. What are you watching? Why are you watching it? Who's cool? Who's not cool? What are you eating? Why are you eating it? What music are you listening to? What app are you using? How are you doing this? I'm asking them a million questions, and I have really discovered so many new things. For example, Mr. Beast, who's now the most watched. You know Mr. Beast?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
You do?
So Mr.
Yeah. He's big.
How do I not know him?
Big influence.
You don't know Mr. Beast? Mr. Beast is the most watched human in the history of humans.
Yeah.
He has over 350 million subscribers to his YouTube channel. He made an equivalent of Squid Games. Squid Games was watched as the most watched show on Netflix, is 160 million views. He has 320 million views on his Squid Games equivalent. And so I only found out about Mr. Beast because I was interrogating these 16 to 24-year-olds, right? So reverse mentorship, playfulness, healing your past, and maybe the most important one is meditation. Because what meditation gives us the opportunity to do is to strengthen the muscle of focus. That's all it is. And so if you're able to strengthen the muscle of focus, you start to focus your brain on what it is you want to focus on. And when you're not a meditator, you don't realize that you actually are not controlling what you're focusing on. Your behaviors, your trauma, your body's intelligence is determining what you think about and why you think about it and how long you're stuck there. That's why some people get anxious and they're like, I can't get out of anxiousness. It's because you can't control what you focus on. And
Yeah,
so
you
what
haven't
meditation,
really you haven't let the like expanded to that. I mean, you really that's a fear thing, right? You haven't really
of,
expanded to absorb or to embrace uncertainty, which is anxiousness, all that stuff. Which might,
well,
by
what
the
has
way,
happened is because, yeah,
go ahead. No, go ahead. Finish. Yeah.
No, no. What has happened is that you become addicted to something called the high beta brainwave. And your
Mm,
high beta brainwave is keeping you stuck in survival mode. And you don't even know you're stuck in it because all your friends are also stuck in high beta brainwave. And the high beta brainwave has been created by the educational system, the
Yeah.
university system, the organizational system, and dare I say it, some religious systems. Why? Because all of them are addicted to certainty. All of
yeah.
them are looking for an outcome. They're not looking for experimentation and adaptability. They're looking for you to get to the end of it as quickly as possible. When you went to university, did anybody ask you what you learned? No, they ask you if you got your degree. And when you went to work, they'll ask you how it's going. And it's always determined by if you're making enough money or not, and if you're hitting your targets. And if you're not, well, you might not be there for a long time. And so
Yeah.
it's this high beta brainwave that has created this level of anxiousness in a world of hyperabundance. We have more food than ever before. We have more money than ever before. We have more access than ever before, but we're more anxious than ever before. And so what
Yeah.
meditation is allowing you to do is to move yourself from this high beta to a high alpha. And in this high alpha brainwave, what you're able to do is focus on what you want to focus on. You're very lateral in the way that you think. And what is most important is that you focus on uplifting emotions. And when you're able to focus on uplifting emotions and that becomes your benchmark, what starts to happen is that your awareness starts to climb and evolve at a very, very fast pace. And as Einstein said, you cannot solve a problem from the same awareness that created it. So the biggest job that we have is to change your awareness. And how do you change your awareness? Focus on uplifting emotions, healing your past, being playful, and being able to engage with the world in a more optimistic way, even though it's so uncertain.
Ah, it's such great wisdom. By the way, John, Mike thought he was Mr. Beast. So
I mean, I was like,
right now, let's go into this is not one of our questions that we sent you. So, but it does have to do with neuroscience. We've interviewed a few academics that are dealing with AI organizations. One guy we had on that was terrific. He's the guy that teaches, he's a psychologist. He's with Arizona State University. And he teaches how the human system is a closed system and the machine system is a closed system. He deals with robotics in DARPA, the military. And one of the things that he finds fascinating is that, and I wanted to get your comment on this, that we're trying to integrate them overnight. These two closed systems, like for instance, you go into a company where people are still using fax machines and scanners, and you have a lunch hour and a half and say, okay, now we're going to get into the future and learn AI. And the people go, why? Why? What's the purpose here? Because 77% of them think it's to replace me. So how do you, when you go into companies, kind of change that? Because a lot of them are just into bureaucracies and they just go, well, that's just what we do, And it's actually it's a complete rebuilding, a complete retrofitting of where we're at to a whole new human 2.5 or whatever.
Yeah, it's a great question. I like to call it
one great question too.
Yes, you did, John. You don't know this,
great question.
but we can't tell him the game, right? Doggone it.
I figured out the game, guys. That wasn't easy. That wasn't hard.
No, I had one podcast, John, where literally everything I said, he said, that's a good question. And then Mike would he kind of leaned in and nothing.
Well, I get a great question. He's like,
that's a great question.
Yeah.
That's a great question. Great. Well, I'm going to say that after every question, guys, so that it's going to be equal. I'm going to make sure I give you guys equal. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Look, the way I do it is that I think that we have to develop and restructure organizations in a brand new way.
Yeah.
And the reason is that what we're trying to do is we're trying to take an old system and add brand new rules to it. And it just doesn't work. And we see so many transformations really fall flat because you are trying to take an old system and make it adaptable. And remember that the world of economies of scale was not adaptable. You didn't need to be, and it didn't prize adaptability. It prized modification and efficiencies. The new world requires constant experimentation and adaptation. So by you trying to take an existing system and make it adaptable, you're lying to yourself. And we see so many organizations say we have now an agile organization. You're not. You can't be agile and focused on quarterly profits. They have very different determinants.
Yeah.
So what I always suggest is today and tomorrow teams. And what today and tomorrow teams are able to do, and if you want to just a quick analogy or a picture in your mind, is a Boeing is a today team and a jet fighter next to it is a tomorrow team. And what you want is you want this jet fighter going out and looking for dangers, defending, creating, experimenting, programming, playing, and then coming back and letting the Boeing understand what's coming ahead and move it in a slight direction and keep going out and trying to solve tomorrow's problems. What happens when you are able to apply today and tomorrow teams or dual teams is that you stop your existing people from being schizophrenic. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to sweat your existing assets, but your existing assets are not ready for AI. They're not ready for data science. They have no clue. And Chris, you had a great stat. 77% of them are worried that their jobs are going to be replaced. They are absolutely right. It is going to replace them because they're not evolving. And so what you have to do is you have to say, look, let's take a slow approach to change. And let's get a jet fighter next to us to keep solving tomorrow's problems. And let us stop thinking that we're going to get our existing team to also think about tomorrow while keeping the lights on today.
So we have to,
John, yeah.
What companies are doing this well? Because you're talking about essentially turning industry on its head.
Of course. So I'll tell you the most famous. I'll give you the most famous tomorrow team. When Steve Jobs went back to Apple, there was the Lisa computer. He hated it. What did he do? He took some of his top engineers, hired some new engineers, took them to the office far away from Apple, put a pirate flag on top of that office. They invented the Macintosh that disrupted the Lisa.
Yeah, that's a great story. I was actually in advertising at that time, and Shai Day was the agency. And the other thing he did, which is I think very apropos to our age, is he changed the story of the company. And he changed the story of how they marketed. I mean, before they would have 9-page spreads in magazines that said, well, here's the speeds and feeds. Here's why it's the fastest.
Nobody cares.
You know what they did? They completely threw all that out. They did the famous 1984 spot with Ridley Scott, which was about, 1984 and the woman throwing the screen against the, Big Brother. Yeah. It's a little bit where we are now. I don't know if anybody's got a handle on the narrative of your narrative, what you're talking about, on a macro scale. I think we're all kind of like ducks. We're pecking each other, to death. Nobody's got the big picture of like, guys, we have to change the entire narrative pretty much of the world or society, culture.
Yeah. Look, Michael, you're absolutely right. Very few companies are practicing it today.
Yeah.
But let's look at what happened to music. What happened to music? It went and became something called the zero marginal cost society, meaning that anything that's digitized is created and shared for free. What happened to Sony, and all the other Time Warner and all? They're all gone, right? So that's gone. Do you remember when we used to pay for photos? Today, Instagram allows us to filter and take photos, and all of us look like supermodels. We used to have telcos.
Well, I mean, some of us are supermodels, John.
Still, not all of us. So yes, you're lucky that you don't have to use all those filters. And if you think about photographs and communication now we have WhatsApp and Zoom, and all those telco sectors had to change their businesses. VW, BMW, Audi, Zara, I'll just keep going. And the reason that these very, very powerful, very, very smart organizations could not see what was happening next is because they had all their people focused on their current business. And what they usually have inside their businesses is an innovation lab, which is made up of existing people in the existing system. Whereas what they really need is a disruption lab. And what a disruption is very different to innovation. Innovation is making your current business model more efficient and more modified and more profit worthy. Disruption is making your current business model obsolete to create a new business model. Yeah, none of these people saw it.
That's Captain Kirk stuff right there, though, Chris. I mean, John, when you're talking about, that's like Captain Kirk University stuff. I mean, you're talking like, no, this is where logic says we should go. This is what Spock says. This is what the computers say. Right. This is what AI says. And you got Captain Kirk in your organization going, no, we're going to blow it all up.
Well, that's the next step. I mean, to get to that, Mike, you're right. I mean, that's where Astro Teller at Google X is trying to do cool things.
That's right.
All these,
He is.
And Apple. Apple's disrupting many, many different fields. But
so is Amazon. But I mean, look at Amazon. Amazon's got tomorrow teams all over the place.
yeah,
They're experimenting continuously
is that
and
yours?
failing
That's
and
great.
experimenting.
Yeah, that's a great word. Tomorrow teams, that's yours, right? That's great.
Yeah, that's mine. Yeah. Today and tomorrow teams. And Michael, remember, as a futurist, you're not telling people what they've already done. You're trying to guide them towards what they should be doing, extrapolating existing examples and technologies into the future and matching them with capabilities. We don't have the right capabilities in most organizations to have build tomorrow teams. You have to build very different skill sets and capabilities to want to understand what's coming. And if you have anybody with an existing understanding or framework of your industry, they have an immunity that's not going to allow them to see those potentials out there.
Yeah, that's good. They got to block it. So,
you know what's so cool about this? Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
Yeah, are you working on an individual level then, John? I mean, as a futurist, you've got to come across some brilliant minds that are limited, right? I mean, they have that immunity that you're talking about. I don't want to say they're limited. They just have an immunity to it, right? So 2 questions for you. How do you break through that?
Two-part.
I know. It's a 2-parter because I got to get them before Chris.
I'll be back in 20 minutes.
So the first is, how do you break the immunity, right?
Yeah.
Oh, dang, Chris. Now I'm going to stick with the one. How do you?
Okay, I'll do a follow-up on Johnson. You get write yours down like Dak Shepard. He's always writing his questions.
I've got it on my hand.
So let's talk about something with tomorrow teams. I just want to follow up on this.
Yeah.
What's really cool about this, John, is that everybody's looking for this gap. Here's the gap. When they say, okay, we're going to bring AI in or agents in, and you're going to free up 2 days of your schedule. We're going to reduce all this time. And as Mike says, that's in unemployment time. It's not creative time. But here's what's really cool.
Yeah.
And I love this idea that what we could say, fill in that gap with, is that's the tomorrow team time.
Yeah, totally.
It could be. Yeah, it could be. It's to start really starting to think.
If you go into a company and say, we're going to free up a day of your time, most people are just saying, well, I just put this paper from here over here. That's what I do all day. I'm not a creative strategist.
What I would recommend is that you don't be a tomorrow team in your existing business and you outsource yourself to a totally different industry.
Yeah.
And start to be a tomorrow team there, because what you need fresh eyes. Yeah. There's a great quote I read the other day. It said, we don't know who discovered water, but we know it wasn't the fish. And so if you think about that, when the fish is in the water all the time, it doesn't know it's in the water, right? So you can't, you have to determine perspective that's totally out there. And Michael, coming back to your question around individuals that are really smart, is when I finish working with them, they feel a sense of relief. And I think that's what's really most important, is that when I allow you to realize that it's okay for you not to have the answers, and the reason you don't have the answers, and the tool sets to create the answers, you feel a sense of relief. Because what's usually happening is, because you're very smart and you're at a high level in your organization, there's massive levels of pressure on you to keep delivering. And you just don't know how, you're stuck. Things aren't working like they want them to, and allowing you to understand why it is that you're not able to see them based on your level of awareness, education, and experience. That first step releases you. Then to explain that your level of awareness is built through these different points, and allow that level of awareness to find new solutions ahead of you while building a tomorrow team with new capabilities. What starts to happen now is that there's an ease to say, okay, we know where we need to be playing, we know we need to be hiring, and we know what we need to be doing. And we have a little bit more breathing space. Because otherwise, organizations saying everybody must do the same. Everybody in the organization must do today and tomorrow and deliver and EBITDA and it's impossible. People are cracking.
So could AI actually be the tomorrow team for an organization, though? Because you're talking about a fresh perspective. Or does it have to be another human? Does it make sense?
Well, I think it's about having a handful of humans working with AI.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's about total AI, and I don't think it's about total humans, but I think it's really about utilizing a handful of humans. And I think you had Salim Ismail on recently, and I was listening to Salim and Peter talking a while back, and they were talking about how most probably the world's first one-employee billion-dollar business has already started. And if you think about that concept, that's a tomorrow team. you're dealing with very few people utilizing technology in the right way to solve tomorrow's problems.
Well, and the problem with AI is that it's all probabilistic. It's always patterns, and it's good for certain constructs, like how do you build business, certain things that exist. But if you're trying to find the unicorns out there, it's probably not your best place to find it, because that's human. You know, that's we said it democratizes to 80%, then there's a 20%, then there's a 1% on top. That 1% is that guy that's receiving, as you said, that Einstein moment. He's drawing it down and went, wow, how about this?
Right.
That's
right.
that.
But I think certain information applied in different sectors could be a unicorn.
Oh yeah,
unicorns. So it really does determine on who's seeing the information and where they're applying it, which also could determine that, But you know, with the pace at which things are going right now, I mean, every rule that we've ever had is breaking almost every few months. It's like, whatever we try and determine here, it's like, we don't know. We're like doing our best, trying our best. And what I always tell my clients is goals are dead, systems are alive. Stop determining goals, because you can't achieve goals because we don't know what's coming. DeepSeek came out, and then you don't know what else is going to come out, and then we just have no idea. Like, how does NVIDIA, a bulletproof company that nobody thought will have any downsides because every company in the world's used them, all of a sudden loses that much money? We're like, how? Like, at what point was that even a part of our reality? And so goals are dead, systems are alive. Create the systems to create adaptability, elevate awareness, simplify artificial intelligence as often as you can. And that process, what starts to happen is you develop this muscle that allows you to simplify, elevate, simplify, elevate, simplify, elevate. And this process allows the system to start to see new solutions.
Well, this is the importance.
Thank you for the highlight reel, John, right there.
Yeah,
was that it? Okay.
Yeah, that was the highlight reel, Chris. You know, that you're describing VUCA, the positive side of VUCA, right? The volatility, you got the negative side, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. You got the positive side, vision, understanding, clarity, adaptability. Wow. Most people are living below in the volatility. They've got to elevate into the vision, the understanding, the clarity, the adaptability. That's a behavior change. That's a mindset. You talk a lot about mind shift in uncertainty, right? Which has a lot to do with people understanding their mission, their purpose, their identity. So speak to that a little bit, because I think a lot of people are out there like, I'm just focused on the tools, but they don't have the discernment to know what to trust or what to question, and they don't even know their self. So if you're talking behavior, which I know is a big deal for you, John, like changing behavior, right? Getting people to or walk into their true behavior. How do you go about that? What do you think the new purpose is or the new identity is?
How does that change my identity? Right.
Yeah.
Dare I say it? Great question.
Yeah.
What I'd like to say. Sorry, Chris. Sorry, I'll come back to you next, Chris. I'll come back to you next. Michael, do you remember the last time you went on a long holiday?
No, I'm the worst. And I talk to people about self-care all the time. And a long holiday?
Our holidays are work, John. Like when I go out to shoot in Italy for 2 weeks, that's my holiday.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
film for 2 weeks in a cool place. That's cool.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's great. You guys are living a great life. But normal people out there will look forward to their 2-week year-end holiday.
Yes, right.
And the last week before they go on that long 2-week holiday, they are more stressed than ever before. They hate their lives. They think their husband is fat. They think their kids are little shits. They don't like their boss. They're not enjoying anything. They're not enjoying themselves. They're not enjoying anything. Yeah. They get on holiday, and the third day of holiday, they wake up and they're like, whoa, I've almost forgotten who I've been. Yeah. And by the 5th day of holiday, they look at their husband. He's not fat anymore. Now he's curvy. And by the 8th day of holiday, their kids aren't little shits, they're just expensive. By the 12th day and 14th day of holiday, they're quite literally different people. They're super relaxed and super lateral in their creativity. In fact, the identity that they had when they arrived on holiday is almost an alien identity to them. They can't even imagine that they would be that stressed, and all the problems they had at home, they realized that on day 14, it's actually them that made all those problems. They created all that drama. They created all those issues. And the only thing that's changed between day 1 of the holiday and day 14 of the holiday is your brainwaves.
That's
That's
so
all
great.
that's
Have
changed.
you seen that show, White Lotus?
I have not.
Oh my gosh.
God.
Oh,
You gotta watch it, John.
Can we plug that show? I mean,
Oh
you're
my
not a
God.
sponsor.
Just start, go binge it right
Okay.
away. You're
Oh,
just
you
gonna
should
love
go
it.
binge it.
It's exactly
Okay.
what you're talking about.
Totally.
It's people
Right.
that go away on vacation and they experience all that stuff. They have miserable times. Right?
Yeah.
And of course, there's a plot. I mean, somebody gets killed.
Of course.
Just hysterical.
Brilliant. Okay, great.
Yeah,
I'm going to
it's
watch it.
brilliant.
So
Hey,
to talk about this, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, keep going.
Sorry.
Go on.
To talk about this behavior change that's required, what you actually have to think about your brain is an engine of a car. Before you went on holiday, your engine was revving at 7,000, 8,000 revs. When
Yeah.
you're coming back from holiday, your brain is revving at 3,000 to 3,500 revs. This new evolution of humankind, the ability for us to access our purpose, to be more adaptable, requires us to slow down, requires us to be still, to be able to access that level of wisdom and to really start to rev your engine at a pace that allows you to see more around you, to actually literally be more lateral in your creativity. And so behavior change comes down to brain waves. And if your brain waves are stuck in a high beta, you cannot change your identity. You cannot be changing your behavior. And you definitely cannot be engaging with uncertainty, with optimism.
That
So
is huge.
behavior,
Huge. I mean, I'm leaving. I'll be gone this weekend now, Mike. I'm leaving for 2 weeks. John's convinced me I need to take off some time.
Well, he's speaking to the importance of meditation too. I think in the morning, because that's powerful what you're talking about.
well, or your personality is based on the revs of your engine.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, is that if you can rev your engine at 3,500 revs, which is an alpha brain state, which is brought about by healing your past, being playful, having a reverse mentor, and meditating, what starts to happen is your behavior naturally starts to move towards one that is adaptable because you're accessing a high alpha brain state.
Does this have to do with when you talk about sadness and strangeness and adventure? Is that part of that?
So what we have to realize is that the transformation we're going through today in this massive shift, the world that we're having, we're going through a transformation, and transformations all have 3 phases. Whether you're moving from one house to another, one relationship to another, one job to another, or this massive transformation we're going through right now, there are 3 phases. The first phase of all transformations is sadness. Sadness to leave the shore of familiarity, sadness to leave your comfort zones, and sadness to leave your identity behind. That's a big one, because think about your identity that you've developed over the last 10, 20 years, and all of a sudden that identity is worthless because AI has arrived or technology has arrived. The second phase of transformation is arriving at a strange new world that doesn't make any sense, a strange new world that you don't have the skills for, and a strange new world that's changing at such a pace that you can't keep up with it. Now, here's the massive challenge that we have, is that you have to be able to arrive at strangeness with optimism, with curiosity, with fascination. But most people are arriving at strangeness with trepidation, with anxiousness and anger. And the reason is that nobody's processing the emotion of sadness to leave the shore of familiarity. And C.S. Lewis said it best. He said, I sat with my anger long enough until she told me her name was grief. And so where we are today is a lack of emotional intelligence to process the emotion of sadness and anger. When you release emotions of sadness and anger, what's left behind is optimism, curiosity, and fascination for the strange new world. And when you're not able to have that emotional intelligence, doesn't matter how many books you read and how many tech shows you go to, and if you're not emotionally processing your emotions, you can't arrive at strangeness with optimism. You can't. It's an impossibility because your brain's grappling for certainty.
Cool. We've condensed the hero's journey down to 6 phases, Mike, from Campbell's 22. That's the first time I've seen it really condensed down to 3.
You know what was so amazing about what John just said?
Really cool.
I mean, I just went on that journey, John. I just felt like I was sitting in church listening to John go, wait a second, I just experienced that whole thing that you talked about over the last 6 months. And what's interesting is when I landed in my new land,
Right.
I was very optimistic, right, Chris? But I was sad.
Right.
And Chris has been on this journey with me, but I wrestled with the sadness, but I was very optimistic about it. That is so powerful. I think if more people understood that piece, like embrace it. That's the pioneer spirit, but most people aren't.
Of course. People get stuck though. They get stuck in existential dread. They just get stuck in one of those and they just start yelling at the news, right?
Yes.
Life is a Kafka novel over and out.
Yeah, exactly. And look, we're about, I would say, 5, if not more, years away from the adventure, which is the third phase, which is when, again, you get wind in your sails and you understand the world ahead of you and you have the level of skill that's required. But we are squarely between sad and strange. Squarely. We are beginning the strange new world. We have left the shore of familiarity. In fact, COVID-19 forced us to leave the shore of familiarity. Nobody wanted to leave the shore of familiarity, but somehow we had to. And we had to process the mourning of our future memories. We had to process the emotional states that many of us really didn't process. And here we are at the beginnings of this strange new world, and the world is upside down with anger and frustration and war, and because they haven't processed any of the emotions. All the wars that,
I mean, our program, Mike, we got to send our film to John. I don't think he's seen it.
Yeah, no, we'll send you the film. Actually, you know what? I would say, and I'm just going to throw this out here, and I know we have this captured on film, but John, we're working on the Rise of Humanness in the Age of AI, this other film. You know what? I think we should just make John.
No, John doesn't like to film. I've seen his post.
Right, it's not very good.
Not like you. Mike and you are kindred spirits.
I love this guy, but you know what? He's making me want to upgrade my glasses. Like,
you should.
Great.
You guys, I saw about it. Go, oh, Mike,
you deserve it, Mike. You deserve better glasses, bro.
I
would put a camera in front of you guys, and you guys just boom the light.
Yeah, but I'd be so enamored because he's got this framework. Like, I love the adventure.
You're both great. I can see you. Yeah. John's great. You're great. I mean, yeah.
But John, that's so. God, we got to get his message.
Oh, we're almost out of time, and you got a heart out too, Mike.
I do. We have a heart out because we've.
You know what? Here's what we're going to do. Yeah. Let's finish with John, and we'll come back and do the bumper. I want to stay with him the whole time.
Yeah. That's totally fine. Yeah, that's totally fine, John. So I think it's so important. You're talking about the 3 phases, right? And we're square right in the middle. We're not in the adventure stage yet. So what? Like, if you were to. You're out to coffee and they're like, listen, John, the uncertainty, the chaos, all this stuff, racking my brain. I'm making a lot of money, but my life sucks. Like, what would you say to that guy? Like, what's the one thing? You're like, this is where you got to start. What is that?
I think what you're describing is what a lot of the world are suffering from, which I call miserable success. What we are suffering from is miserable success, is that with all the money in the world and all the trappings that we thought would give us some level of meaning, we find ourselves empty. And there was a great quote I read the other day. It said, people are tired not because they are fatigued, it's because the system has let them down. And so we realize that the system that we've been chasing really doesn't have much meaning inside it. And only once we've arrived at our 10th Rolex and 14th BMW do we realize this is a crock of shit. What is this? Like, what is going on here? Like, I've got all the trappings, but I'm on Prozac having an affair and drinking vodka on a Wednesday morning because it doesn't smell of anything. Like, it just is a ridiculous notion, right? And so what we have to realize is that the rules of success have to change. The idea of luxury has to evolve. And what I would tell somebody like that is to really start to ask deeper questions of how do you show up with a more open heart? How do you start to show up with more curiosity in your steps and in your determination of how you're engaging with life? And what I always tell my audiences is we spend millions of dollars on going to gym. We spend millions of dollars of developing our minds and going to universities, but we spend almost $0 developing our emotions and elevating our consciousness and healing our past. And we just don't. And we realize that that's really where the next level of luxury and success is coming from. Because for me, success is really determined by the luxury of peace and stillness within myself to make better decisions.
Amen.
Because if I don't have that, I have nothing. Really, I have nothing. And so
beautiful.
It's a Jedi mode. And Jedi mode is really this ability to be able to deal with the world in an optimistic, calm way. And takes practice. And it's a flex to be able to deal with the world in a more adaptable, optimistic, and calm way. It's a real flex because most people aren't able to do that. And with all the fancy cars and all the fancy money, you're sitting in traffic, irritated and impatient with the traffic. You've lost the game. You haven't won the game.
Especially in our world, because everything's instant gratification.
Yeah, that's right.
Your phone, even a ping, all that stuff is instant gratification. And what you're talking about is shifting your instant gratification from a Porsche, or a vacation or all that to what you're saying, emotions. What a great way to end the show, Mike. It's fabulous.
Well, I was just thinking about my buddies that served on the, special operators and things along that line. We always talk about the one thing that we will defend after getting out of the military is our peace. Like, don't F with our peace. Right? Because it's so important, because if you don't have that, you start to make bad decisions, right? You go down very dark roads. So I think it's a great way to end the show. John, we got to have him back.
You know what? Yeah, we got to have John back. And if you show up with John's glasses, Nix.
I am going to go get these glasses.
Look, I've got them in every color. I mean, I can have red ones for you.
Those are Bono.
I know this is the new Mike.
I got blue ones for you. I got them all over.
Oh my God. That's
we'll end off with these.
That's very, John, that's very Jack Nicholson there that you have. That's very,
Bono, Jack Nicholson. You know what? I got a message on Instagram. Yeah, I got a message on Instagram from Tom Ford. They said, look, we like your vibe. We want to give you a gift, you a couple frames. So here I am. I got all these Tom Fords. They gave them to me.
See, that's because he's got nice hair too. He's got nice hair. They go like, that's,
You can get a rug. Hey, I got to, before you go, I was going to ask you a question. Do you know Anton Musgrave? South African guy. Are you?
Yes. Anton Musgrave. Why do I know that name? Who's that?
Well, he's a good friend of Gerd, and I shot him in, has a big consulting firm, kind of future stuff in South Africa.
Yes. I've spoken to him a few times. Yes, of course I know. Yes. I
shot him in Cannes last year.
Yes.
Yeah. Are you in South Africa now?
Sorry?
Are you in South Africa now? I know you're traveling.
No, I'm in Dubai.
Dubai.
Yeah.
Well, we should have shot the
city of the future
episode in Dubai, Chris. What are we doing?
What?
We should have shot this episode in Dubai.
Well, we're going to get a studio. That's our next stage.
Yeah. So, John, this has been exceptional.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely exceptional. We're going to have you back. Chris, I'm actually going to let you do the exit. I mean, because John's so amazing.
Well, John, this is obviously being mind expanding and awareness shifting. And
thank you so much, guys.
I think we just scratched the surface of all your wisdom.
Oh, yeah.
We got into some rabbit holes here, but we're going to have John back, talk more about all of his, incredible redefining hope in an uncertain world, more about the Tomorrow team, more about AI and HI and all that kind of stuff. So till next time, John, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everybody. Ciao.
Right. Bye-bye.
Ciao. Bye-bye.
And for those listening, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, share, and remember, the future waits for no one, but it does send reminders like this podcast.
I love that. Well, guys, until next time, be adaptable.
And stay human. Bye-bye, everybody.
The rise of humanness in the age of AI. It's a podcast with Chris and Mike. The rise of humanness in the age of AI. Stay curious, stay human, let's rise.